Good morning, everyone. Mark Messingschlager, Director of Financial Aid. And I have to confess, I kind of cheated on mine. So mine is more of a process and procedural innovation within the Financial Aid Office, and it was much broader than just this academic year. So mine went back, as you'll see, actually about 3 years ago, almost to the date when we actually started this process. So what do I mean by tap auto packaging? So in the financial aid world, we can manually package students. So we can take a look at one individual student at a time. One of our counselors can take a look at one student and pass them through the system. Or if we can find an automated way to do that, because most students are getting similar kinds of aid, how can we automate the process and have the computer help us and use our manual efforts to troubleshoot and double check? So as a summary, when we began our TAP program 25 years ago, so this year we celebrated our 25th anniversary of the TAP program, it was so revolutionary in its design and its idea that we just had to do it manually in financial aid. And we were happy to do that, we were proud of it because it was so innovative. The program itself was so innovative that that's just the way it needed to be done. What made it so innovative was it was considered non-term. So we all in this room consider usually term-based academic years. We have a fall term, a spring term, and then a summer term. TAP did not have those terms. It was considered non-term. You started whenever there was enough people to start a group. So from our finance and budget office, we said if you could get, usually the number was 14. When we had 14 students, you could start tomorrow if you wanted to. And we did not follow terms in that program. As you might imagine, that created some kinks in the financial aid process. The government doesn't typically like the outliers. They don't like when we don't conform to their processes. So it was very difficult, very painful, very manual, very prone to errors and audit findings. So what we found over the years was it really wasn't working anymore, at least for our process. Our software wasn't able to really handle it. And so how could we break out of that mold? How could we do this and create this auto packaging process for these students? And what we quickly found out that it was going to be a gigantic team effort from faculty all the way through all the departments. So here are a lot of the problems that I've already talked about. So one of the big ones is delayed receipt of admissions decisions. So we partnered with a third party. Many of you know Helix. So Helix does all of our recruiting and marketing for our adult students. The problem was they have their own database. In Thomas More, we have our separate database, and those two databases did not talk to each other. So we did not, so these two delayed admission receipts and delayed receipt of FAFSA, financial aid data, we would not get that information until the student was already registered for classes. That is extremely late in the process, simply because those two databases did not talk to each other. There was no integration there. Prone to audit findings, as I mentioned, and not able, this last piece, that's kind of a financial aid term. SAP, SAP, is satisfactory academic progress. So how are students performing? Are they still eligible for federal aid based on their GPA and their progression? We weren't even able to run that whole process, meaning we were completely out of compliance because we simply could not. There was no reliable way to do it with this model. So we always like to say, I have these two comparison pictures. This is essentially how we were doing financial aid in the TAP program, one student at a time. We were perilously close to falling off the cliff at all times, with our audit findings and compliance. So what we're hoping to get to something more like this, that we can funnel some more people through. It's a more streamlined process, very smooth pavement. Obviously, this road is not in Kentucky or anywhere near this area. So looking pretty smooth. So I mentioned our data integration. We have a Helix software system and a Step software system. How do we close the zipper? I use that analogy in many meetings, and you all have probably heard this in a meeting or two that I've been in with you. So we have our Helix software up here, our Step software up here. How do we bridge the gap? Well, we've got to close the zipper. So we finally closed the zipper, and those two systems talk nightly. So we finally have our data integration bridge. As soon as Helix makes a decision, we have that decision in our software, meaning we can get the FAFSA data, we can get that process rolling for financial aid. All of these players were key players in this whole process, from IT to Helix, Registrar's Office, Business Office, Bursar, admissions, all our institutional reporting, all of the faculty in this room as well, thank you all. College of Business, College of Health Sciences, basically every professor that teaches in our TAP program had to modify it, whether you knew it or not. Remember, we used to do a 5-week 5-week class, and it was a lockstep class schedule in the TEP program. Now we do 6-week. Part of that process was to pave the way for financial aid. Now there's a lot of other reasons we moved to that 6-week model, but financial aid was a part of it, so thank you all. A quick timeline. I won't spend much time on this, but you can see, as I mentioned at the beginning, we really started this process about 3 years ago when we floated the idea of a standard term academic calendar. And that's what we go back to talking about a fall term, a spring term, and a summer term. So one of the great benefits of the TAP program was we could start a cohort whenever we wanted to. And that was the beauty of the program, was that students were able to start. They didn't want to wait until August 19th or a January 13th to start. So we do a hybrid now. We have what's called a standard term with modules. So a module is a 6-week mini term within a term. So now we have a hybrid. And we do allow starts to happen, say August 19th, next week, with the beginning of our fall term. 6 weeks later, we have another start. 6 weeks after that, we have another start. Because we have these modules, 6-week modules within each term. And that allows us to still have all of our rolling starts within a TAP program, but still conform at a federal level to a standard term model. So really pretty exciting we were able to get that to work. Just a couple highlights on here. So January 17th, we rolled that process out with our graduate programs. So all graduate programs, because they're easier, rolled over to that standard term of modules program. Later that year, August 17th, then all undergraduate programs did that as well. So that initiated then a 2-year transition period, because all of our TAP programs are at minimum 2 years in length. So that got the clock rolling. Continue the timeline. I'm going to move straight forward to December 2018. Just this past December, we were finally able to do this satisfactory academic progress. I mentioned we were out of compliance forever on that. So we were finally able to run that for the very first time, and now we're back in compliance. Everyone will be happy to know, especially me. Fast forward to this year, so I'll go right to July of 2019, our final non-term cohort. So I mentioned that 2-year transition period is finally at a close. That last 2-year cohort came through and are finishing up in July. So now, fast forward to August of 2019, and we do have auto packaging ready to go. It is in the final testing phase, so it is not up and running as smoothly as that 3-lane highway I showed quite yet. But anything that big and that worth it needs a lot of testing, so we're still in that phase. Any questions? So basically the mission-centric piece is it really affords our students it's a more streamlined process. It gets them information much sooner. How can they afford it? What options do they have in terms of financing their degree and their education? So that's our responsibility to others. Any questions? I think I'm the last staff person, so thank you all, and we'll introduce some faculty innovation as well.